Hey guys, Ken here. Hey, thanks for joining me. I want to talk about the Candyman movie, but the one from 1992. I actually got done watching the new film, the one that came out a couple of months ago, and I went into that one without realizing, anything much about it, and I watched it, and halfway through the film, I realized that, shit, it's not actually a reboot like I thought. Okay, and it's probably because both movies, but the new one and the original, they have the same title, the exact same title, Candyman. All right, and I kind of thought it was going to be a reboot, but then halfway through it, I realized that fuck, it's actually a sequel, and they were referencing all this stuff from the original movie that I completely forgot about, and I kind of felt that look, I need to watch that thing again, and it's great when a movie does that. I think if I think back now, when I watched The Thing, in 2011, the one that was based off the John Carpenter original, and even that one, I didn't read up too much about it before I watched it, and I got into it, and I didn't realize, until the end that it's actually supposed to be a prequel. Okay, so I love it when a movie does that, and it's always a good idea to not know too much about a film before you actually watch it. So anyway, all this stuff, with Candyman just made me want to go back and check out the original movie from 1992 all over again. Now, I'm from Malaysia, by the way, and the original Candyman movie, as I recall, never really played in cinemas here back in the 90s. It was probably banned, okay, back in the day because censorship was pretty serious about horror movies, and I think the gore in it was pretty heavy, and and coupled with that, it was also probably a much smaller release and probably couldn't get much distribution worldwide. All right, so I had to wait like years later until I could actually get my hands on a videotape of it. All right, see how long ago that was, and I mean they weren't even DVDs yet. All right, so I had to actually get a video cassette to watch it. And I do remember thinking back even then that, this just wasn't some run of the mill, ordinary slasher film. This was something that was actually done with great care. There's a lot of really great visuals and cinematography here, right from the opening frames of the film itself. So, yeah, this is one of those movies that it has a cult following, and deservedly so. The film stars Virginia Madsen, who just a year before that was in Highlander 2, The Quickening. Okay, that one was like hated by everyone. But in this one, she's really great. Okay, trust me, all right. She plays Helen, a student who's writing a thesis on urban legends, including one involving a supernatural being called Candyman, who has a hook where his right hand is supposed to be. Now, as the legend goes, Candyman will appear if you say his name 5 times in front of a mirror. Now, what does the Candyman really want? Well, most probably he's not turning up for tea and scones. Most probably he's here to take your soul. As Helen continues her investigation into the myth of the Candyman, her search takes her to some increasingly disturbing and unsettling discoveries. Now, the movie really takes its time to set up the story. Nothing feels rushed. There's nothing like, 100 fast-moving edits or anything like that. Everything is just moving at its own pace. And so much of the first half of the movie is pulled off by Virginia Madsen's very strong performance. And she comes off as being very likable, but all the while, you just can't help but get the feeling that something dreadful is about to happen to her. Now, there's a scene in the movie where one of the characters begins to explain the backstory of the Candyman for the first time, and it's just filled with all these really shocking and horrifying details. And we are hearing it, together with Helen for the first time. And as the details are unspooling, the camera focuses entirely on Helen's face throughout the entire time. And I just love the way that they shot that. And it's just one of those things where, we really got to see the expressions on her face change, and I just felt that the way they did it, that just involved some very powerful acting on her part. Tony Todd as the Candyman, he gets second billing in the movie, but you have to wait literally 45 minutes before you even get your first full appearance of him. But this scene of him, man, it's one for the film history books for sure. Definitely one of the greatest screen villain debuts ever captured. Now, everything about it, from the way that it was shot to the way that the Candyman just stands there at first and then slowly starts moving towards Helen in this deserted parking lot. And all along, he's got this booming voice. The first time you hear him, he's like, Helen, Helen, be my victim. It's just It's just movie magic. Like all the famous horror film bad guys, Tony Todd really owns the role. All right, you don't get too much of him in the film. You just get enough of him so that he's always impactful. And it's sad that the remaining sequels to the franchise were never of similar quality. Or else I think that, Candyman would have been more of a household name through the years, just like Freddy or Jason. But ultimately, it's this character and this intro scene. Now, that's what I think fans will always remember him for. Candyman has got some really strong scenes of extreme gore and violence, and some of it kind of catches you off guard. Okay, I gotta say that I don't know what is it about the older movies, probably from the 90s and stuff like that, but it seems like when red blood appears on screen, it's fucking red. Okay, and a lot of the movie has this, okay, like really really bloody scenes where the red looks so freaking graphic, and yeah, it pretty much earns its hard R rating in that sense. But the movie is probably bogged down, I think, by some pretty ridiculous jump scare scenes that don't actually even involve the main character. Doesn't even involve the Candyman, but you get these pretty silly jump scares that kind of like intended to be jump scares, all right, but they're pretty badly executed, and these kind of happen like in the first half hour of the film itself. So I mean, stuff like that kind of bogs it down a bit, but overall the quality of the film is just fantastic. And I actually thought that this film was directed by Clive Barker himself. It's based off one of his short stories, The Forbidden. And back in the early 90s, somewhere towards the late 80s to the early 90s, Clive Barker's name was on a lot of these horror films. He had the first Hellraiser movie out, and then he had Nightbreed. He also did a lot of Illusions. So Candyman kind of like falls in the middle of these projects. But as it turns out, Clive's just the executive producer. He's not the director. The film is directed by Bernard Rose. I'm not really familiar with his work, but I did sort of look him up on IMDb. It doesn't seem like he's been doing a lot of really notable projects of late, not since Candyman. I think that Candyman is probably the highest grossing film that he's done, but his work here is just amazing. Yeah, it's definitely somebody who, when you see stuff in a film like this, you definitely want to see more of it. When you think about it, it's pretty shocking how fast time flies. So this year, 2022, is actually the 30th anniversary of the release of the original Candyman film. And looking back at it now, so much of the film feels like it still holds up very well today. Even though it's being made, before the smartphone era and stuff like that. But at the same time, a lot of it also feels kind of like it's a product of its time. There's a scene actually in the film where four characters in the movie are having dinner in a fine restaurant, and they all proceed to light up cigarettes right after their meal. And they just start smoking it up right there in the restaurant. And I just thought to myself that, wow, that's just something that, first of all, hardly ever happens today, because with the restrictions in place, I think it's pretty much global. Definitely here in Malaysia, you can't just smoke in a restaurant. Okay, you can't smoke practically anywhere, all right? I mean, except maybe at the side of the road. But the other thing is also, you hardly ever see characters smoking in movies these days. Okay, let alone characters that aren't bad guys or villains. These are just four ordinary people just having a fine meal, and then just proceed to all simultaneously light up cigarettes after finishing their food. This is just something that just never happens anymore. Only in the 90s. Okay, so ultimately, yeah, this film is a strong recommend. Definitely, if you're a horror film fan, if you've never seen this, definitely make it a point to watch it at least once. All right, so that's my look at Candyman from 1992. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. Do subscribe to the channel. It's one of my earliest videos here, but I plan to do a lot more. So I'll catch you guys again soon. Take care.